If you're researching mobile proxies, you've probably heard of Bright Data. They're one of the biggest names in the proxy industry. They're also making a different bet than dedicated mobile proxy providers. And understanding that bet is important for figuring out which solution is actually right for you. I'm going to be honest about both because both have use cases, but they're fundamentally different products optimized for different goals. Let me start with the core difference. Bright Data operates massive shared IP pools. Tens of thousands of IPs, all mixed together, serving millions of users. Their pricing model is pay by gigabyte or subscription for unlimited usage. You buy access to the pool. You don't get a dedicated IP. You're sharing with other customers. Dedicated Singapore mobile providers operate fixed IP pools, hundreds or thousands of IPs, each assigned to one user or one account. You pay per IP per month. You get a dedicated IP or at least an IP that's only yours during your session. You're not sharing with other users. That's the fundamental difference. Shared pool versus dedicated, and everything flows from that. Let me show you side by side how this plays out. IP sourcing. Bright Data. They source IPs from their own residential and mobile networks. They've built their own infrastructure over years. That scale is impressive. They have coverage in almost every country. Dedicated SG providers. They source from Singapore mobile carriers directly. Singtel, StarHub, smaller carriers. Usually smaller scale but extremely focused on quality in specific regions. Winner, Bright Data for global coverage, dedicated SG for Singapore specificity. Session control, Bright Data. Rotation is automatic and you have limited control. You can request sticky sessions on some plans, but it's not the default. Forced rotation happens unless you're on a premium plan. Even then, session length control is not granular. Dedicated SG. Session control is built in. You specify session length, 1 hour, 4 hours, 24 hours. The IP doesn't rotate until you release it. Winner. Dedicated SG. Session control is essential for accounts. Exclusivity, Bright Data. Your IP is shared with other customers on the same pool. At any given time, thousands of requests might be coming from the same IP but from different users. Dedicated SG. Your IP is exclusively yours during your session. Only your traffic comes from that IP. When you're done, someone else might get the IP next. Winner. Dedicated SG for account operations. Exclusivity prevents correlation problems. ASN transparency. Bright Data. They provide ASN information, but their IPs are all from their network. The ASN says Bright Data or their network name, not the underlying carrier. This is visible to platforms as a proxy network. Dedicated SG. The ASN shows the actual Singapore carrier. Singtel, StarHub, whatever carrier the IP comes from. This is invisible as a proxy network because it's real carrier traffic. Winner, dedicated SG, native carrier, ASN is more trustworthy. Forced rotation problem. Bright Data. Their default is automatic rotation. You buy a plan, you get unlimited rotating IPs. Rotation happens automatically, usually every few requests or minutes. This is great for high volume scraping. It's terrible for account operations because of the session persistence issue we discussed earlier. Some of the premium plans offer sticky sessions, but you're paying significantly more and rotation is still a configurable risk. Dedicated SG. Rotation is 0 by default unless you opt in. You control it completely. Winner. Dedicated SG for accounts. Bright Data for scraping. Pricing model, Bright Data, pay per gigabyte or monthly subscription. Unlimited usage on a subscription plan. Sounds cheaper upfront. It is cheaper if you're doing high volume operations like scraping. For one account, you might use minimal bandwidth. So a monthly subscription seems cheaper than buying dedicated IPs. Dedicated SG, fixed price per IP per month. $50 to $200 per IP depending on exclusivity. If you're running 50 accounts, that's thousands per month. But if you're running 3 accounts, that's $150 to $600 per month. Much better than Bright Data's equivalent. Winner depends on scale. Bright Data wins at massive scale. Dedicated wins at small scale. When Bright Data makes sense, high volume scraping. You're pulling massive amounts of data. You need lots of IPs, you need rotation, you need volume and cost efficiency. SEO tools. Rank tracking at massive scale where you need rotation between sessions. Content gathering, you're indexing the web, you need high volume, rotation helps you avoid blocks. General browsing anonymity, you want privacy, you're not creating accounts, rotation is fine. Bright Data is optimized for these use cases. When dedicated Singapore mobile wins, social account operations. You're creating Instagram, TikTok, Facebook accounts. You need stability, session control, and trustworthiness. E-commerce account management, running seller accounts on Lazada or Shopee. These platforms are sensitive to IP changes. Ad account management. Google Ads, Facebook Ads. These platforms tie accounts to IPs. Session control is critical. Long-term account operations. Anything where you need the account to survive long-term and be profitable. Dedicated providers are optimized for these use cases. My honest take. If you're doing account operations, use dedicated Singapore mobile proxies. The session control alone is worth it. Forced rotation from bright data will kill your accounts. If you're doing scraping or high volume data gathering, bright data makes more sense. The cost efficiency wins. If you're only using 3 to 5 accounts, dedicated is cheaper. If you're using hundreds of accounts, bright data might be cheaper at scale. The worst choice is using bright data for account operations. You'll pay for the service, lose accounts to forced rotation, and blame the proxy quality when really the rotation model doesn't work for accounts. The second worst choice is using dedicated proxies for high volume scraping. You'll overpay because you're paying per IP instead of per gigabyte. Match the tool to the job. Don't use one for the other. And one final note. ASN reputation matters more than provider name. A Singapore carrier IP from Singtel or StarHub ASN is inherently more trustworthy than any provider-owned ASN. Even if that provider is bright data, platforms see real carrier networks as more legitimate. So if you're choosing between bright data and a dedicated provider, check the ASN. Does the dedicated provider use real carrier IPs? Or do they have their own ASN that shows as a proxy network? Real carrier IPs beat provider ASNs every time. That's the honest comparison. Both are valid. Wrong choice wastes money. Right choice works great.